My brother took my inheritance and told my parents he was drowning in debt, while secretly launching a funded startup. So I printed every lie, dropped the folder at dinner, and watched my mom's face fall as she read. Sunday dinners at my parents' house were always the same: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and the kind of small talk that made my brain want to escape through my ears. I used to find some comfort in the routine, but that night, something felt off. My name's Asher. I'm 34, live in Springfield, Missouri, and I work as a project manager for a construction firm. My younger brother, Luke, still lives in town too, though he bounces around a lot. We don't exactly have sibling rivalry, it's more like sibling imbalance. But I'll get to that. That Sunday, we were halfway through dinner when the topic of our grandparents came up. My mom was reminiscing about how Grandma used to sneak her sugar cookies after dinner when Luke chuckled and said, "Hard to believe it's been a year since the funeral." I nodded, swallowing a bite of chicken. Yeah, I actually just got the last bit of the inheritance stuff sorted a few weeks ago. Taxes were a nightmare. I said it casually, more like a side comment than anything. But then I noticed my mom's fork freeze halfway to her mouth. My dad cleared his throat. Luke didn't say anything, but his jaw clenched just enough for me to catch it. "What?" I asked, looking around the table. Mom set her fork down and wiped her mouth with a napkin like she was about to deliver a speech. "Asher, honey, we didn't think you'd mind, but, well, we gave Luke your part of the inheritance." I blinked. "You what? You don't need it like he does," she said gently, almost like she was trying to make me feel good about it. "You have a steady job, a house, no dependents. Luke's been trying to get his business off the ground, and we all agreed it was the right thing to do." I looked at my dad, who gave a half-hearted shrug like it wasn't his idea, but he wasn't going to argue either. Luke still didn't speak. He just stared at his plate like if he looked up, he might catch fire. I felt my face go hot. Not from anger. Not yet. More like confusion, like someone had pulled the rug out from under me and I was still in midair. "You gave him my share?" I repeated, trying to keep my voice even. Mom nodded slowly. "We were just trying to help him, sweetheart." I wanted to say something, anything, but nothing came out. I just sat there, stunned, while everyone else acted like that was the end of the conversation. A minute later, I excused myself. I walked out the front door and into the cold evening air. My breath fogged up in front of me as I leaned against the porch railing. They gave away my inheritance. Just like that. Not because I agreed to it. Not because I didn't need it. But because they decided Luke needed it more. And I was supposed to be okay with that? I stood there for a long time, trying to make sense of it. But deep down, I already knew. Something wasn't right. I didn't sleep much that night. I just kept hearing Mom's voice over and over. "You don't need it like he does." Like I was some overachiever hoarding wealth I didn't deserve. Like Luke was a charity case instead of a grown man who made his own choices. The next morning, I was still rattled. I didn't tell anyone about the conversation, not even my friend Josh at work, who usually gets the play-by-play of my family drama. I needed time to think. Quiet, uninterrupted time, which, for me, meant going for a long drive with no music and too much coffee. Somewhere along Route 125, it hit me. I didn't even know what Luke was supposedly struggling with. I knew he tried to launch a landscaping business last year. It lasted about 6 months before he claimed the market was oversaturated and started driving for a food delivery app instead. Before that, it was pressure washing, then a podcast idea he never followed through on. Luke had always been full of plans. Big ones. Loud ones. But follow through? Not so much. And yet somehow, he always managed to land softly. A check from Mom here. A loan from Dad there. And now, apparently, my inheritance. I pulled over into a gas station lot and sat there with the engine running, remembering things I hadn't thought about in years. Like how when we were kids, I'd work weekends stocking shelves at a hardware store to save up for a used car, while Luke somehow ended up with our uncle's old Civic as a favor. Or how Mom once cried on the phone because Luke had racked up credit card debt again and she didn't know how to help him. They were always helping him. That was the pattern. And I was always the one they didn't worry about. It wasn't like I wanted to see Luke fail. I didn't. But I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, my parents had been blind to the fact that he wasn't really trying. That they had poured money and trust into this idea of who he could be, and not who he actually was. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Not loud, boiling over angry. Quiet, bitter angry. The kind that sat in my chest like a cinder block. By the time I got back home that evening, I had a plan. I wasn't going to explode on anyone. I wasn't going to make wild accusations. But I wasn't going to let it go, either. I needed to know the truth about the money, about what Luke had told them, about why they thought I wouldn't care. The next family dinner was in 2 weeks for Dad's birthday. I circled the date on the kitchen calendar with a red marker. By then, I'd have questions ready, and I'd be looking for answers. It happened a few days before Dad's birthday dinner. I wasn't even trying to snoop, not really. I had swung by my parents' place after work to drop off a folding table they'd asked to borrow. Mom was in the kitchen, fussing over cake ingredients. She'd barely acknowledge me beyond. Just leave it in the garage, sweetheart. On my way out, I passed the hallway. That's when I heard it. Dad's voice, low and tense. So how much exactly did he say they're investing? Mom answered quickly, almost nervously. He didn't give a number. Just said they're backing him fully. Said it's all coming together. I froze just out of sight. My hand was still on the doorknob. I don't know, Diane, Dad said. I mean, if he's got investors, why did we give him the rest of Asher's inheritance? My stomach flipped. I know, Mom replied. But Luke said the investor money doesn't kick in until the fall, and he's still drowning in debt. The credit cards, the loans, it's all stacked up. He needed help now. And we didn't even talk to Asher about it. There was a long silence. I couldn't see them, but I pictured Dad rubbing his temple like he always did when he didn't want to deal with something. Mom's voice softened. He's always been the responsible one. He'll understand. Eventually. I didn't wait to hear the rest. I slipped out the front door and sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel, heart thudding in my chest. My mouth was dry. My thoughts were loud. Investor money? I sat there for 10 full minutes before even starting the car. Everything started lining up in my head like a puzzle I hadn't realized I'd been working on. The way Luke had been quiet at dinner. The sudden defensiveness in my parents' tone. The past years of vague mentions about Luke's ideas and projects that never materialized, and now, suddenly, he had investors? Why would someone with actual investors need my inheritance? Why would he hide that from our parents unless he had something to hide? The next day, I started digging. It wasn't anything fancy. Just a little old-fashioned sleuthing, a few Google searches, some poking around on LinkedIn, checking mutual friends' profiles on social media. Luke wasn't careful. He never was. I found a post from a local entrepreneurs forum. A photo of Luke standing next to some sleek roll-up banner. Revamp, eco-friendly home renovation, launching fall 2025. He was tagged in the photo, smiling, arm around a guy named Bradley Cook, a name I vaguely recognized from high school. Beneath the post, someone had commented, "Can't wait to see what you and your investors do with this. Big things ahead." So there it was, out in the open, not broke, not desperate, but still using me as a safety net. I printed it out. I printed out every piece I could find, the social media posts, the comments, even a blurry flyer someone had posted for a networking event that featured Luke as a speaker. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was the lie, the performance, the idea that I'd be too checked out, too agreeable to ever notice. But I had noticed. And at Dad's birthday dinner, I was going to say something. Dad's birthday dinner was at a steakhouse on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, just a darkwood booth, decent food, and the usual small talk. I showed up with a forced smile and the printed evidence folded neatly in my coat pocket. Luke was already there when I arrived, laughing too loudly at something Mom said. He was dressed better than usual, a tailored button-down, some new leather boots. I noticed a silver watch on his wrist that definitely hadn't been there 2 months ago. I waited until after dessert, when the conversation started to lull and Dad was distracted unwrapping a pair of golf gloves. That's when I turned to Luke. "So," I said, keeping my tone light, "how's the new venture coming along?" Luke glanced at me, quick and guarded. "What do you mean?" "Your business. Revamp, right? Eco-friendly renovations?" He blinked. "Oh, yeah, still early. Just ideas for now." I tilted my head. "Really?" "Because I saw a post from a networking event where you were listed as a speaker. There was even a banner. You looked pretty official." He stiffened. "And something about investors? People said you've got full backing." Luke chuckled, but it sounded forced. "It's nothing serious yet. Just some meetings. A few guys said they were interested. That's all." I nodded slowly. "So nothing's signed? No money exchanged?" He shifted in his seat. "No. I mean, there's been some interest. But it's complicated. I don't want to get into the details." I looked at him carefully. "That's funny. Because Mom and Dad said you were still in debt. That you needed my share of the inheritance just to stay afloat." He looked toward our parents, then back at me. "Why are you bringing this up here?" "I'm just trying to understand," I said quietly. "Because either you're running a promising startup with investor money, or you're drowning in debt and need family support. Which is it?" Luke's mouth opened, then closed. His eyes darted to Mom, who looked increasingly nervous, and Dad, who was staring at his plate like it might save him. "I didn't lie," Luke muttered. "I just didn't tell them everything." I leaned in slightly. "You didn't tell them anything. That's the difference." He crossed his arms. "So what? You want the money back? Is that what this is about?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He was already getting defensive, his tone sharp and deflective. "I'm not some scammer," he snapped. "I'm trying to build something real here." "Then why lie?" I asked. "Why take something that wasn't yours to begin with?" Luke didn't respond. And in that silence, I realized he wasn't just hiding things from our parents. He was hiding them from everyone, playing two sides of the same story, hoping no one would compare notes. But I had. And now, I wasn't letting it go. After that dinner, I couldn't stop thinking about the way Luke looked at me when I asked him about the investors. It wasn't fear or guilt, it was annoyance. Like I'd interrupted the story he was telling and made things inconvenient. That's when I knew he didn't think he'd done anything wrong. He thought I'd just stay quiet, like always. But this time, I didn't. The next morning, I pulled out my old laptop and started digging. I didn't really know what I was looking for at first, just something. I scrolled through Luke's social media profiles, his business website, even the old GoFundMe page he'd used 2 years ago to raise money for startup costs when he was launching his green junk removal service. That one went under in 6 months, but he'd kept the leftover donations. I remembered because I was one of the people who chipped in $100 back then, just to support his dream. The further I went back, the more patterns I saw. Big ideas, short lifespans, flashy announcements, no follow-through. But the newer stuff? That was different. He had a LinkedIn update from 3 weeks ago that read, excited to be partnering with 2 local investors to launch Revamp this fall. Sustainable solutions, practical execution. More soon. Underneath were comments congratulating him. One stood out from a woman named Mara Sims. Can't wait to see how you and Bradley scale this up. He's got a sharp eye for opportunity. Looks like a strong partnership already. Bradley. That same name from the entrepreneur event. I clicked into Bradley's profile. Apparently, he was a real estate developer, small-time, but connected. I found a press release on a local business blog about a renovation project he was funding. No mention of Luke, but it didn't matter. The paper trail was there, and it proved that Luke wasn't just trying to get something going. He was already knee-deep in something and keeping it quiet. That afternoon, I checked my old emails. Sure enough, I found a few from Luke, mostly casual, mixed in with family stuff. But then there was one from about 10 months ago, sent at 2:18 a.m., titled, "Need a quick favor, don't tell mom." Inside was a PDF attachment, a business plan draft for something called EcoPro Renovations. Same logo as Revamp. Same language. At the time, I hadn't thought anything of it. But now I realized Luke had been working on this for almost a year. And sometime during that year, he let our parents believe he was flat broke, just long enough for them to feel sorry enough to steal from me on his behalf. By the end of the day, I had printed everything out and placed it in a folder. I wasn't just angry anymore. I felt betrayed. Not just by Luke, but by my parents too. They hadn't even asked me. They just assumed I'd be fine, that I'd understand, that I didn't need what was mine. The hardest part was knowing how long they'd all been treating me like a spare part in my own family. The dependable one. The easy one. I looked down at the folder in my hands. I wasn't going to be the quiet one anymore. At the next dinner, I was going to lay it all out. Every lie, every omission, every dollar they shifted behind my back. And this time, I wouldn't be asking for an explanation. I'd be giving them one. The following Sunday, I drove to my parents' house with the folder on the passenger seat beside me. I didn't even bother hiding it. I wasn't showing up for another casual dinner. I was showing up to be heard. The moment I walked in, it felt like every nerve in my body was on high alert. The living room smelled like pot roast and cinnamon candles. My mom greeted me like nothing had ever happened, smiling too brightly as she wiped her hands on a dish towel. "Asher, we were just about to sit down." "Great," I said, keeping my voice flat. Luke was already at the table. He looked up, gave me a nod like we were fine. Like he hadn't lied to our parents, taken my money, and then played the victim when I called him on it. I sat across from him. The seat felt harder than usual. Everything felt off. My dad poured wine and made a joke about football. My mom fussed over the gravy. Luke pretended he didn't see the folder I set down beside my plate. I waited. The conversation bounced around. Work, local events, weather. I watched them all, talking like nothing was wrong, like I hadn't been cut out of a major family decision and lied to on top of it. Then it happened. Mom looked at Luke and smiled. "I just know this new business will work out. You're due for a win." Luke smiled back. "Thanks, Mom. I'm doing everything I can." And that's when I felt it, that sharp stab in my chest. The lie, still alive, still accepted, still being treated like truth. I picked up my fork, then put it down. "So," I said slowly, "how exactly is the new business going?" The room went quiet. Luke glanced up, guarded again. "It's going. Still getting things in place." "Any luck finding more investors?" I asked. My mom blinked. "Investors?" Luke coughed lightly. "It's early. Nothing finalized." "Really?" I leaned back. "Because I found that flyer from the networking event. The one where you were speaking on behalf of Revamp." He froze. "You said the launch is this fall, that it's already funded." My mom looked between us, confused. "Luke," he forced a laugh. "It's not what it looks like." "I think it's exactly what it looks like," I said calmly. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't shaking. I felt steady. Steadier than I'd ever felt sitting at that table. My dad cleared his throat. "Asher, this really isn't the time." "No, it is," I said. "It's exactly the time." I looked at Luke. You told them you were drowning in debt, that you needed help just to stay afloat. He said nothing. I gave you time to come clean. I gave Mom and Dad time, too. But if no one's going to tell the truth, I will. I opened the folder. Luke's face drained of color. And just like that, everything shifted. The tension wasn't under the surface anymore. It filled the room like smoke. I didn't need to raise my voice. The evidence would do the talking. I slid the folder across the table and let it land in front of my dad. He didn't reach for it at first, just stared at the front like it might explode. My mom looked from the folder to me, eyebrows furrowed, mouth slightly open. "What is this?" she asked, voice tight. "Proof," I said simply. Luke's eyes darted between us, like he was calculating how fast he'd need to talk to spin this around. "This is insane, Asher." "No," I said, still calm. "What's insane is pretending you needed my inheritance while secretly launching a business with outside money. What's insane is Mom and Dad handing it over without asking me." Dad finally opened the folder. He flipped through the first couple pages, the business plan, the networking flyer, screenshots of LinkedIn updates. He frowned deeper with each one. "This is from your revamp thing?" he asked, directing the question to Luke. Luke hesitated. "Yeah, but it's not what you think. That's just marketing stuff. I needed your help to get it off the ground." "You said you were drowning in debt," I interrupted. "That the investors wouldn't commit unless you could show you had family support. Except you never said that to me. You said nothing to me. You let them take my share without a word." Mom reached for the folder. Her hands shook slightly as she flipped a few pages in. "Where did you get this?" "The internet. Emails." Your golden child wasn't exactly subtle. Luke leaned back in his chair. "You're being dramatic." "No," I said, my voice sharper now. "You're being dishonest. You took money that wasn't yours and painted me as the guy who'd be fine with it. You played everyone." Mom looked at Luke. Her face was pale. "Is this true?" Luke opened his mouth, then closed it. His silence said more than anything he could have explained. My dad rubbed his jaw and sat back, exhaling slowly. "Why didn't you just tell us you were funded already?" "Because he knew you wouldn't give him my share if you knew the truth," I said. "And you did it anyway, without asking me, without even checking if I was okay with it." My mom's face crumpled. "We thought that I wouldn't care," I finished. "Because I'm stable. Because I don't need the money. But that's not the point. You made a decision about my future based on his mistakes." Dad looked like he was about to speak, but I cut him off. "It's not about the money anymore," I said. "It's about how easily you decided I didn't matter." The room went quiet. For a long, heavy minute, no one spoke. Then I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a slip of paper. "This," I said, holding it up, "is a receipt. I donated my share of the inheritance to a local nonprofit. A good one. Help single parents get housing and training." My mom's mouth dropped open. I figured if I was never going to benefit from it, someone else should. Luke scoffed. "So you wasted it, just to prove a point." "No," I said, standing up. "I let it go, because I'm done playing the role you all assigned me." I looked at each of them, one by one. "You wanted me to be the quiet, dependable one, the one who takes the hit without complaint. That version of me doesn't exist anymore." Then I turned to leave. No one tried to stop me. I left the folder on the table. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't look back. I just walked out of that house with the sound of my own footsteps echoing behind me and nothing else. No one followed. Outside, the sky was beginning to darken, streaks of orange fading into blue. I sat in my car for a few minutes, letting the silence settle around me. My hands were still, but my chest felt hollow, like everything I'd carried for years had finally spilled out, and now there was just space. I should have felt triumphant, but I didn't. Not really. There was relief, sure. But beneath it was something else, sadness maybe, or grief. Not because I regretted what I'd done, but because I knew what it meant. Things wouldn't go back to how they were. And honestly, that was the point. I thought about Luke's face, that mixture of arrogance and panic when he realized I'd caught him. I thought about Mom's voice, cracking as she read those printed pages. I thought about Dad, silent as ever, watching the whole thing happen like it wasn't his place to intervene. Maybe now they'd understand what it felt like to be ignored, to be taken for granted. That night, I didn't talk to anyone. No texts, no calls. I went home, made a grilled cheese, and sat on the couch with the TV on mute. The quiet was strange at first. Then it felt peaceful. No guilt, no expectations, just stillness. In the days that followed, no one reached out. I saw that Luke deleted some of his posts. His business page quietly went dark. Maybe he was trying to cover his tracks. Maybe he was just embarrassed. I didn't care either way. What mattered was that I had drawn the line. Finally, for the first time in years, I stopped waiting for approval that was never coming. I stopped hoping they'd one day look at me and say, "We're proud of you." I stopped pretending I was okay being second place in my own family. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. And done felt good. A week later, I got a thank you email from the nonprofit I donated to. The director wrote about how the money would help 2 families move into housing next month. There was a photo attached, a mom and her 2 kids, standing in front of a plain brick building, smiling like they'd won the lottery. That's when I felt it. Something solid and real settle in my chest. I may not have gotten the inheritance, but at least I got my peace.